Welcome to another award-winning mini lesson from Mr. Sawatsky. This one is about some travels that I took out west with my family in the summer of 2006, with a specific focus on my visit to the Battle of Little Bighorn and also seeing some Tonka live and in person. So, as mentioned, the focus will be on the Battle of Little Bighorn, which you learned a little bit about in class, or the build-up to the Battle of Little Bighorn, which takes place in 1876. Before we get there, though, stop in Montana. The picture that you see there is of me with my two daughters when we were all a little bit younger. And behind me is a cliff, and I want to point out the cliff. You're going to see it a little bit more in a video clip that I have in a moment. But the cliff that you see here and the edge of the cliff is where Indians, prior to having better weapons like bows and arrows to kill the buffalo, they used to drive the buffalo off of a cliff by lining up, kind of creating a tunnel and scaring them so that they start running. And they actually would run over the cliff, where they would then be killed. If they didn't die in the fall, they would be killed down here by Indians who are awaiting their fall. It was called the Buffalo Jump, and this is at Buffalo Jump State Park. The jump was not intentional nor enjoyed by the buffalo. This is a buffalo seen up close at Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. This is really not even with much of a zoom at all. It is thankfully from our car. And I want to show you a couple clips related to the two things I just told you about. So let me zoom over here for a second.
Madison Buffalo Jump, home of the famous Indian slaughterhouse of the buffaloes from over 2,000 years ago, up to about 200 years ago. There's the cliff where the buffaloes would be forced to jump on. Consider that. And the way it worked, as you can see through this picture here.
Sorry for the wind.
By finding their grazing area and by setting up rocks and escaping them. Over the cliff. And animals that didn't die were then slaughtered with bones and other rocks to kill them. And the women then tore apart the carcasses into various different pieces that you see over here. Food, clothing, shelter, tools, and weapons. And here we are in Montana at the famous Madison Buffalo Jump. And there, out there, is where me, Mr. Sawatsky, avoided getting bit by a rattlesnake. True story. Good night. Here's the buffalo! Who said it's good to do?
Okay, so there was a little bit of a zoom.
Look at this. Right there, man. Walking right in front.
You saw little babies. Sydney, look out my window. There's little baby ones.
Good film work, Mr. Sawatsky.
Are they growling?
Wait for it.
I saw them first.
Actually, I saw it first.
So we all get a sticker.
Yeah, I think we deserve it for this one.
And we all do deserve a sticker, especially you listening at home. Okay, back to the Battle of Little Bighorn. There's our Tonka up close. One thing that you'll need to know for the test is where the Battle of Little Bighorn took place, and that is obviously shown on the screen right here. If you get that wrong, that's your own fault. It is out on the Great Plains, so taking a look, you can see that it is extremely flat with some dry, tall grasses there. There's a river off in the distance. And this is where Indians were encamped in the summer of 1876 when Custer and his men came across them. Custer, as you'll find out, thought that they needed to move swiftly to catch the Indians. It turns out that the Indians outnumbered Custer and his men 4-1, and Custer and his men paid for it dearly. This is a view from up top, looking down on the plains. And again, you can see the landscape that we'll be looking at in class. This is an area where the retreat took place, where the Americans tried to move backwards, but to no avail. Just trying to give you a sense of the pictures because you'll see a little bit of the battle reenactment in class on Tuesday. Across throughout the Battle of Little Bighorn National Park, you see gravestones like this. The ones that are here in white are for Americans that died. One of the more famous charges, yes, it's true, is called the Lame White Man Charge. I did not make that up. And some more of the places that you see again, just to show you what it would have looked like back then. The markers of the dead, the ones that are in white, as mentioned, are for Americans who died. For years, that was all that was out on the Great Plains on this battlefield. Later, they added gravestones for the Indians that died. Although if you go out and walk amongst this area here, you certainly see a lot more of these than these, which would allow you to infer who won the battle. At the grave site, where there's a whole bunch of them, and what they did was they just leave the gravestones where they found the bodies, so they're scattered throughout. They're not in a central location, except here on this hill, where it's believed that Custer himself died. Oh, hello. And also dying were a number of horses, and there is a horse cemetery at one of the locations there where the horses were later buried. There are memorials both to the Americans who died there and also to the Indians. And the ones, again, the Indian ones were added a little bit later. And you see the names of some of the people who died at this battle, which we'll be talking about in class. The Sioux who died, the Lakota Sioux. And through the distance, you can see the American Memorial as well. This is a really interesting place to visit. It's not often that you find yourself in Montana, but if you ever do, you should pay a visit to this famous site of one of the most famous battles in American history, and it's what we'll be learning about in class on Tuesday. Your assignment is to write down on the post-it one question that you have about the battle, its location, or my trip. It's pretty easy homework. See you tomorrow.